Okay, good morning, students. Good morning, everyone. Let's start the lesson. So, let me introduce the topic of the lesson: project documentation and evaluation. And today the teacher is Shantaев E.N, the teacher of computer science, Астана and ISPHM. So let's start the lesson. The topic is also related to the computer coursework that students need to write in 12th grade. The carry on of the previous lesson that we started already last week. So let me. It's not documented, it didn't happen, so it's a famous saying. So today I'm going to show you that it's real true, because this is related to our coursework totally and absolutely. Okay, let's carry on. Lesson objectives. Today we have 3 objectives that we are going to cover. The first one is use comments to explain the functioning of a solution. Second one, create programs with practical, personal and or social purpose. And the last one is analyze problems and evaluate the feasibility of creating computer-based solutions. So let me just know you that system documentation and evaluation already starts when you have already finished the project. I mean the programming part. So programming part, software development, testing and installation has already finished, and then only after this you can start these 2 sections, because these 2 sections are based on the previous knowledge and the previous project that you have done already. So if you have some problems or something is not already fixed, that you cannot start this section. So please be careful, and next time when you're going to do such kind of projects, keep in mind that these kind of things happen. Okay. So I put this picture here, the keep calm and read the documentation, because sometimes students think that it's the most boring part of the project, because documentation. Is it really interesting? No, because it includes a lot of writing, a lot of thinking to discuss, nothing actual moving, nothing about animation, etc. So, but anyway, it's when you start it, you can find that sometimes it's quite exciting. Okay, let's carry on. Next slide, please. Okay, documentation. We have actually 2 different parts. Documentation part gives you 10 marks maximum, but it's divided on 2 small sections. The first one is system maintenance documentation. Maximum marks are 4. And there are some criteria here. Let me read it. 1 or 2 omissions, but the rest is present and annotated is used sensibly. Okay, items are presented with annotated attempted. So here you need to describe a lot of things that related to your system. On the next slide I am going to show you in details. Okay, second one is user documentation. It's more important than the first one, because it's given 6 marks for this piece of work. What kind of criteria do we have here? The first 2 points you will be given if an incomplete guide, perhaps with no screen displays, some options briefly described but difficult for the user to follow. So you should know, and always keep in mind that this section is about how user going to use your program, already created program. So please, here you need to write everything clear, and each step of the user should be already predicted here and predict the user from some errors, okay, or wrong stages. Next, all but 1 or 2 omissions fully described. For example, backup routines not mentioned, etc. So in the main, the options are easy for the user to follow with screen displays. So here you can see that if you have screen displays or some screenshots, it's very good for good evaluated this work, because the user will absolutely understand what he is not, because he can compare his actual program problem or with the guideline. Okay, and the last one, you need to have full user guide with all options described and well presented, possibly as a booklet, maybe, but it's not obligatory, with an index and glossary. No omissions of any of the options available, including backup routines, guide or common errors. Marks may be lost for inadequate descriptions of some options. For full marks, good on-screen help should exist, where this is sensible option, and be present in the form of a hypertext document. So later, of course, I'm going to show you how the good user documentation, I mean the user manual, looks like. Okay, let's carry on for now. System maintenance is the first part of documentation. Sorry. Actually, it consists of 4 or 5 main parts that list them. So system overview, detailed algorithm design, procedure and variables list, annotated listings of programming code, macro code and tailoring, database tables in design view. So actually it looks very bulky, but let's look deeply on this The first one, system overview. So here you need to include structural overview of how different forms links together. So it means something logical way of the forms that you already exist in your program. So you need to show here in this part of documentation. Second part, list all the forms, modules, classes, and describe what each does. It means you should again go back to your program listings and see again what kind of forms, modules, classes did you use, and put them in a table in some logical way to show how the system works. And sometimes we call it the listing of the system. So number 3, if applicable, include an inheritance diagram if it's applicable to your project. If not, it's not a problem. If applicable, again, include an ERD diagram. Again, if you are working with a database, it's obvious that you should use ERD, but if not, it doesn't matter. The last one, you are then going to list the different subroutines on each of the forms, modules, classes, and describe what each of them does, mentioning any return values or parameters. Again, here you can go back to the programming part, and you know from the programming part that inevitable criteria, one of the main criteria was show a different range of programming skills. So if you use programming skills such as like subroutines, it's also one possible way to gather a lot of marks. So here you need to go back here again and describe these subroutines in this section. Carry on. Okay. Detailed algorithm design, the second part. So here you need to include some examples of your most complicated algorithms and how you build them. Okay, plain English description of what the code does. Pseudocode outline of the code. Real code well laid out with commands where necessary. Again, you know that your program actually based on some algorithm. And here in this part, you again should write algorithm design, discuss it here. Using not programming, but you can use pseudocode as well. So it's acceptable. Okay, this looks more like a system documentation. So procedure and variables list. What about this? So we can see here that this example was taken from students' work from the previous year. So here is a table called form logic objects, login objects. So here are all objects that were used on the form login. This was created on the object-oriented programming Delphi. So you can see here that object name is login button, and type is a button, registration button, the type is button, edit login, edit pass, two different edits, type of edit. And here is written their purpose, why they were used in this case. So it's obvious that registration form usually is a simple piece of paper with like two different edits where you can edit, write new login, new password, and then press the registration button or submit. So here is like the same. Okay, very nice and clear. Okay, next one, database tables in design view. It's not a secret actually that most of our students across all online schools choose the database like as the main part of their projects. So their topics are based with database. It doesn't matter what kind of area they choose their projects and what kind of business. Anyway, database is anyway. Yeah, data is stored in some tables, warehouses, etc. So students have such kind of projects, and this means that they're going to use database, but not in itself. So remember, in the guideline of the coursework, it was said before at the very beginning, when the teacher already introduced this for the students, it was told that database in itself cannot be a project topic as chosen of the students, because the using of such kind of programs like Microsoft Access or other programs, applicable programs which are working with database, are so easy and do not include programming. So even a child, or let's say that students of 5th grade, can easily do these kind of things. So that's why students need to choose something more complicated. In this case, we can introduce, or we can suggest for the students, connect database with the web programming, or in any other case, so they can use database, connect with object-oriented programming is like one web solution, edit, enhance their project and the topic of their projects. So here is this example, exactly database was connected, the database created in Access was connected, linked to the Delphi object-oriented programming. So forms were created in object-oriented environment, and database was connected in Access separately, but then finally they were linked all together. So the table name, so here we can see that table name is list, sessions, and tickets. Student lists all the tables that he used. And why did he use these 3 tables? So it contains lists of movies and their descriptions. Okay, the adequate explanation of using this table. And then he's going to write all the tables in design view. So you know that design view, we have actually 2 different ways of looking on the table and working with the table in Access or in other different programs like table view and design view. So here is the design view, because here you can see exactly what kind of fields were used and what was the data type, and also students add the purpose of using these tables. Okay, clear? Let's go. System maintenance. System maintenance is also important part of the system documentation, because it includes section references, possible adaptive maintenance, backup procedure, and storage media use. Now I would like to stop on each of these small parts and explain them with examples which are given here. Okay, so section references. This part is quite simple and easy. You can see here that student need, after he made all these previous sections that you mentioned, he moves here in this section references. Here on the right column, sorry, left column, students write the topic or the keywords or the different chapters, and then he put like a page, in which page you can find these things. So this is like an evidence. For example, why we need these section references in the system maintenance or documentation. It's obvious that when your user or the person who are going to maintain your program is going to use the final product, if he will receive some problems or some logical errors, he also will like where he need to find the program listings or some keywords in order to fix the problem. Actually, this is the main purpose. That's why he can link and go to the page references and easily find the thing he needs. Okay, then next in our list was possible adaptive maintenance, backup procedure, storage, media use. So all these 3 things were linked all together on one page, because actually it's not a rocket science, it's not a big piece of work. So just student, this is an example again from student's work taken from the previous year. So student just mentioned slightly these 3 things. So let's look, what did he put in here? So possible adaptive maintenance. He said to further improvement of the system. So students looked in the future, so what he would like to improve in the future. Maybe today he has some limitations, so he has no time or no resources to finish his project or to improve it, but in the future he would like if all the conditions will be good. So allow the owner to have access to the system through the internet, allow the online booking, connecting the database via the smartphone, the availability of sort to data by various characteristics, different databases for different flags, having an ability to decide how the sort of files on the report, etc. So these are desirable things that will be in the future if this project will be developed. Next, backup procedure. Backup procedure is actually a very obvious thing, so students put the obvious thing again. So to backup the system, use 4 USB flash drives, 4 gigabytes of free space on each. So 2 of the flash cards will be used in the daily backups, 2 of the drives will be used to make weekly backups. Yeah, clear. The 2 daily drives should be updated every other day. So here students describe the process of how the backup procedure happens and how to avoid the losing of the data, because it's very important. Yeah, it's computer based, that's why we need to prevent some dangerous situations. Carry on, okay. Next part, user manual. I like this part mostly because students, when they start writing this part, they show the wide of their fantasy or their abstract thinking. So because here they should write the manual for a real user, so as the user will be their friend, for example. So they can test this user manual on their relatives, friends, nearest and dearest. So that's why it's very interesting for them also. So what should include in the user manual? First one is title page, because any user manual should have a cover page, so everyone should know that this is the thing that he is going to use, like if something goes wrong. Next, contents page, again, like references to the coursework. Next, it's a brief introduction and installation of instructions. Good. Next, detailed description of the use of the full system. Samples of actual screen displays and examples of error messages and error recovery procedures. It's like a normal user manual. So if you bought, for example, if you buy an iron or doesn't matter, computer or any stereo system, always in the box you should have user manual. This thing goes like an inevitable part of any system, any device. User manual is written for user, not for a programmer or a specialist, software specialist or hardware specialist. It's written for user, so everybody who's going to read this should understand what is this and what is this, and how to, if you press this button, what happens, and if you enter this kind of message or receive this kind of message, what happens and what you should do in this case. That's the purpose of user manual. So I just took this example from one of my good students the previous year. So he just started as user documentation, and then put the first one is user manual, common error guide, see below. So it gives the student, the user, the way of how it's going to be happen. So the first one is when opening the program, the user will see the form like below. If he did not use the program before, see the second page, step 2. If not, see the third page, step 3. So fully mentioned, everything mentioned in this instruction. And then this form, entry form, so the user can use it now. So when firstly using the system, the user see the sign into the system, namely to enter the login and the password which he or she is going to use all the time when starting the program. So everything is clear, so 2 different fields, and the user can see how he should act. Common error guide. This is also a very important part, because we know when we buy a new phone, or for example, if you're buying something, your new car, so if you find some problems or some unknown messages, you don't know what to do. So in this case, the clever developer should put in the user manual a special document called common error guide. In this document, so user can find his message about the error and the cause and how he can solve it. Yep. So let's look here. So the first error was account not found message. What should do in this case? So the problem is that there are several accounts registered on the same computer. And how you can solve it? Just press OK button, nothing will happen. Okay, let's carry on. Message invalid field name. When some fields are necessary to fill correctly and you entered wrong data. Yeah, very easy to understand. Retype the correct format. Message too long password. When you sign up with too big passwords, shortened password, etc. So this kind of errors, so the developer, in this case students, need to think deeply and need to predict what kind of errors the user can receive in this when using the program. Okay. So important thing is here. So sometimes generally we have 2 types of errors. The errors, so we call them system errors, that happen during you are testing your system or actually already installed. Or the second error is, you said that it was it's better to say predicted error. Okay, let's call it predicted error. So here you can see 2 different pictures. The first picture in the red line is a system error. So the error that is given by the system if you made something wrong. For example, here is a project 1, raise the exception, etc. with a message invalid argument, process stopped, user step off or run to continue. Here you can see the second one, mistake again. You just leave the fields empty and press the button save, and it's empty fields. So you need to fill them in to put something in the database or somewhere to process the data. So when you're creating the project, you should avoid that kind of system errors, like in the red line, in the red box here. Why? Let me explain. So the system error causes the fatal errors, and then the system maybe crash or then after this something is going to be wrong. When you already think and predict about the error, then you protect your project and your user as well, who is going to use the program, from other actions that can damage your program. Okay, and in the same time, it means that that your project is so clever that you already predicted this kind of errors, that the client should use a wrong format, for example, or should leave the empty fields. It means that your project made very properly and you made a thorough analysis of the code and already put these messages into the code that show them problems with some parts of the system. Okay, but the first kind, the error messages, try to avoid them because you can lose your marks when doing and testing the project. Okay, carry on. Okay, user manual. What we have at the end of them? So we have backup routine, we have glossary, and we have index. So why this is necessary? Again, this is written for user, for a person who is not a programmer or a specialist, as I said before. So that's why everything needs to be clear. And if sometimes you're repeating the information, it's not actually a big deal. It's a problem. It's not a problem. So anyway, it will be very useful and easy for user to use. So backup routine, let's say you are able not to care about backup because two reasons. The initial backup will be done by myself. It means that the student is going to fix the problem. And daily backup will be done automatically. That's good, that's nice thing. Glossary. Here student puts some words that he thinks that will be known for the user of this program. Or maybe some specific term and key vocabulary. Okay. So indexes. Index again show you the reference of these words like glossary, backup routine, etc. So you can find it on these pages. Okay, carry on again. Coursework is nearly finished, almost done. We have the last step that will finish the coursework. And do you know how it's called? Okay, I think you try to guess. Now students, looking on this picture, what you can see here, there are two different situations. The first one, I think, is the coast of Florida in USA. Yeah, this Caribbean Sea here. And this is the same photo, but something happened. Something happened, and then it was, the houses were destroyed. It was something terrible. So when we were making the comparing of these two situations, we made an evaluation. So the last part is evaluation. Carry on. Evaluation. Yeah, evaluation consists of two parts, actually. Yeah, two parts. The first part is discussion of degree of success in meeting of the original objectives. And the second is evaluate the client's and user's response to the system. Okay, so I taught last year the 12th grade and I have some experience working with 12th grades writing the coursework. So sometimes students have problems with evaluation, the first part, sometimes they have a problem with the second one. But generally, mostly about all of them, mostly have the problems with both of them, of these two sections. And let me explain why. So at the beginning, we said that the main criteria for this project, for the coursework, was that students need to find the real client. And this project, actually, the coursework, is not almost related to the programming. It is related to the different kind of things. Students need to show different skills, like investigation, like making questionnaires, like deep analysis, thorough thinking about the system, and finally they create a solution. So the programming takes only about 18 marks out of 60. That's why evaluation gives you 6 marks out of 60. Means 10% of this work is given only for evaluation. This is if you have a look on the first time, you think it's actually not a problem. It's not actually so difficult. But when you start, you can find that there are some different problems that usually cause in many students' works. So let's look on the criteria. The first one, the degree of success. Students need to evaluate their success by themselves. We call it self-evaluation. But how it looks? Okay, 1 point will be given if some discussion of the success or otherwise of the work, but with no references in the specification set out into the section C. Okay, some discussion. 2 marks will be given for some discussion about the number of objectives set out in C, but some omissions or inadequate explanations of success or failure. Sometimes you have inadequate explanations. I totally agree with this statement. Number 3, a full discussion taking each objective mentioned in the C part 1 and explaining the degree of success in meeting them, indicating where the project evidence can be found to support this or giving reasons why they were not met. So we can see easily that in this section, discussion of degree of success, students need to go to his design part and to see again what kind of objectives he put there, and then did he meet these objectives. Like, if you remember in the programming part, after you finish your programming, before testing, after you finish in software development as well, you should go back to the design and again compare these two things. In design, this picture that I put here is satisfied to my programming or what I had in final result. So the main criteria there is if, so not if, just the design specification, the programming and the software development need to satisfy and fully met the design objectives. If no, students lose marks. Here we have the same. You should find your objectives and you should compare. And here you should write, here in the evaluation part, you should write that this objective was fully met because I met this and this, and my client put this and this, etc. And also you should put an evidence. Okay, and the second part, evaluation on the client's response. Here you can be given 3 marks maximum. Okay, let's look for the 1 mark criteria. Some effort has been made to make the system user-friendly, but the user still has difficulty using the system. Maybe 2 marks. The system is in the main user-friendly, but there is room for improvement. For example, no on-screen help has been provided. The user indicates that the system could be used, but there are some faults which needs to be rectified. Okay, and let's look on the best criteria that are given 3 marks for this section. A fully user-friendly system has been produced. The user indicates that the system fully met the specification given in section B, and there are no known faults in the system. When the client gives you response, you need to react on this letter and give an adequate answer. Not for client, just for yourself. You just evaluate a piece of work and say what was wrong and what was good. Let's look on examples and try to explain. So the degree of success, as I said before, the main questions that you need to ask, each student needs to ask myself, just did I mention or did I meet my objectives? And in order to make it clear and to show it, put here like an evidence of your coursework, you need to create a table like this. And in this table you should say the first was objective, the second is meet or not, and an evidence, which page and which part of the coursework this section does include. Okay, carry on. This example, this is a good example. Student followed the same structure of the table, and what do we have? Table is divided. We can see that student mentioned here 5 different objectives. The first one, he didn't name it, but it was named before after, so this was taken from the context. So I tried to make the computer system as simple as possible. For example, from the first page, the number of elements is reduced to the minimum. Another way to get the user friendliness is to insert on-screen help. Almost all fields which have to be inserted have a caption that says that the type of data has to be written. Likewise, this caption are easily deleted just by pressing on the field. Lastly, there are 3 buttons which whips the data out in the fields in order to give availability to delete data quickly. So did he meet his objectives? He said partially. And where you can find the evidence direction, he said programming, page 25 till 67. Okay, carry on. Second objective was to provide automatic storage on drive is used. He said the main reason to do like that is the Windows 8 or 8.1 have synchronization with OneDrive with default system settings. It was really easy because it's a one-click operation. Firstly, I just activated into synchronization and then caused the fault. So students mean that he mentioned totally because he said it was very easy for him to do. Number 3, he said that again it was pretty easy. The structure of the database does not allow duplication, etc. So you can see here students very detailed and thoroughly discussed his objectives and give the feedback. If he succeeds, he reads that he met this. If not, he's just said honestly that he did met it partially. It doesn't mean in here. It doesn't mean that you if you have, for example, 8 different objectives in design, that you should put 9 of them here and say that all of them were mentioned and all of them were totally met. It's unrealistic, because when you are doing the programming, not programming, a project, so you are doing some kind of project in a system life cycle. So system life cycle, as I said before in the previous lesson, in here, this is like a scrum. You always come back on the previous section and evaluate it. So what do you have? What's going right or not or wrong? So it's obvious that you, at the beginning, you would like something desirable, something already created or not created, but was planned. But when you start to do it, you can face with some problems. Sometimes you cannot overcome these problems, and it's absolutely okay. Because in system life cycle, you can expect such kind of problems, and we can accept them. That's why it's not a big problem, because during the project development, you can change some moments, change some part of the system, and this is the process. That means that you're working on the problem. If you can fix it, it's perfect. But not if not, anyway, you should show the evidence that you try to fix it, and it's normally. Client response. Let's go to the second part. So here you can see the two different examples of what my students show me on the evaluation last year. So this was a system created for the school, for the staff, for the teachers, etc. So everyone can use it. Okay, let's have a look on the first one. I have tested the system and found that the reporting functions works very well and also allows to print out reports. I'm really glad how professionally and efficient you executed the projects. I'm positive that our colleagues from other schools will be very happy to hear about your success and will use your knowledge and expertise in designing similar systems for their schools. So this was given by one teacher. The second one, I have tested your program and I'm really liked the way you thinking about the problems for the school. Implementation for this programming will make my job easier because I will not run all around the school every morning in order to check the student. Okay, this teacher was in charge of doing this kind of stuff, and so students need to he decided to solve the problem of this teacher. Actually, it was not only one teacher who was suffering from this, from the previous system, but there were a lot of them. That's why students try to fix the problem and was given such kind of response. Okay. Feedback from the client. Okay, as I showed before, you can receive this kind of letters from your client. If in other case it can be done by account, Gmail account, etc. So by email, and you should just screenshot it and put it in your project, so it shows an evidence that you interact with your client and involved him on a process. Okay, the feedback from the client should include several criteria. So let's look on them. The first one is general feedback about how easy the system is to use, talking about all the users. So I need to mention about this. How does the system meet their objectives? Client need to be more specific and try to say about these objectives, because at the beginning, you know, in design section, all the objectives of the system need to be discussed with the client. That's why it's important, and here you need to input them, you mention them in the letter. Next, how easy was the system to set up? Again, clients should mention this. Criticism of what they don't like. Absolutely, criticism is always very good part, so it enhances your piece of work, because everything cannot be okay always, all the time. Sometimes you need some criticism to make a step forward. Suggestions about how they would like the system to be improved or extended. It's also a very important part, because if your system is static and stable, if you think everything is okay and there is no possibilities or no other ideas to go forward, it means it's a bad project, because there is no ways to improve and there are no suggestions. And the last, signature and the data, because this is an evidence. You need to put an evidence that the client did this and put this his signature, special date. Okay, carry on. Analyze the client's response. Then, once you receive the message or the letter from the client or the feedback, you need to write your own analysis to the report, to the client's report. So, client gives you his own view, and then you should evaluate the work that you did, and then the client's response, and then you should put all together these ideas and then say, should analyze. So, did they achieve everything that they would like, that they wanted to achieve, or what kind of problems did I overcome, or what kind of problems didn't solve, etc. So this example again from one student's work. So this student criticized, this client criticized the student, but also he said about the good things. You know, it's very thorough analysis. He talked about the relationship between tables. It's a letter of the client. He also said about some combinations of keys, and also he said about the signings, the design forms, etc., etc. This is a thorough letter. It means that student and the client made a big job altogether. So they discussed different things, and they go back to the design and the final program, and then compare this. And only after this, client can write this kind of letter. Okay, now I think we reached the final part of the lesson. Now let's do a plenary. So this is a simple game called True or False. So of course this is online lesson, so I have no opportunity to work in a real auditory. So generally, originally this game was need to be provided like this. So you put your hand like this, thumb up or thumb down. So and close your eyes. Then I'm going to read some statements for you about the previous topic that we covered so far. And then you need to decide in the class, as a class. So if you think it's true, you should put the thumb up. If it's wrong, you should put the thumb down. And then the teacher, I am going to around the class, and if you are wrong, I'm going to put you in the right direction, like this or this. Okay, so very simple. So if in this case, in our situation, let's play honestly. So I'm going to read the statement, and then you're going to give me the answer. And then I'm going to give you feedback. Okay, carry on. Okay, the first one. Documentation section consists of two parts: system and user manual. Is it true or false? Let's think about 5 seconds for this. Okay, and your answer is? Okay, I hope that most of you know the right answer, because that's a true statement. Yeah, actually at the beginning of the lesson I said that documentation consists of system documentation and the user manual. Okay, good. Next one. Database tables in the system documentation need to be in a table view. 5 seconds again. Okay, so let me give you feedback. Actually, it's false, because database tables in documentation need to be in design view. It was said before. Number 3, statement 3. Common error guide should have a system error messages as an example. This is false statement. Yeah, I think all of you know about it, because common error guide, I said, need to have, like it was in the green box, it was already predicted message about an error. Okay. Okay, next one. Student meets all objectives of the system in evaluation part. So let's paraphrase it. Let's say students have to meet all objectives in the system in the evaluation part of the project coursework. Actually, you can see that this is false. Yeah, this is false, because I said that sometimes you have some problems and you cannot overcome. It's absolutely okay, but you need to describe why and when it happened and why it happened. And the last one. Client response should contain as much evidence as possible. 5 seconds to think. 2, 1. Okay, this answer is actually true. Yeah, as much evidence as you show, it means that your coursework become more enhanced. Okay, that's why try to use letters, signs or screenshots of the client's response. That will help you in the future or give you more marks for the coursework. Okay. This was actually the end of the lesson, and all the resources were taken from the wikibooks.org website, and also it was taken from the computer science guideline for 12th grade. It's a very useful document. Even if you have no ideas, even if you have no teacher, you can use this document alone in itself, and you can make a very good project. It's absolutely desirable. And all the resources you can find on the Moodle website. Okay, thank you for your attention.